I stepped into JFK's Terminal 4 with my coat clutched tight, even though it wasn't that cold inside. The kind of grip you hold when you need an anchor, more than you need warmth. People hustled past with wheeled bags and hurried looks, but somehow every stranger seemed to have someone waiting. Hugs, laughter, a shared coffee, even silence, but not the lonely kind. I looked for my family. They were supposed to land 10 minutes after me. Different flight, different mindset. That's how it always was. Them together, me separate. Not because of logistics, because that's just how it was done. A man brushed past, murmuring, "Excuse me, ma'am," with a half smile. I nodded politely. Moments like that, tiny human kindness, reminded me what I never got from those who should have cared most. I watched a young girl run into her father's arms, clinging to him like her life depended on it. I swallowed hard and looked away. Travel had always been a battlefield in my family. Every trip was a report card. Who booked it? Who paid for it? Who arrived in style? I learned early not to expect the benefit of the doubt. I carried my own bags, literally and otherwise. But this time was different. I had something in motion they didn't know about. Not yet. A secret plan, humming beneath my skin like jet engines warming on the tarmac. They thought they knew who I was. They didn't. Back when I was 17, I remember calling Mom to ask if I should come to Thanksgiving. She said, "We're doing it small this year, just family." That silence, that pause before I answered. That was when I first understood what just family really meant to them. Not me. I always booked my own flights, paid for my own hotels, took cabs while others rode together. Once, when I was 14, they left for Disneyland without me because I had too much homework. They didn't even pretend to be sorry. I saw the pictures online that night. Smiles, Mickey ears. No room for me. It's not about one missed trip. It's the pattern. It's the muscle memory of being forgotten. So when I spotted them across the terminal, Dad, Maureen, and Ryan, I stood still for a moment. They were loud, as usual. Dad's voice carried without effort. Maureen had that laugh, high-pitched and sharp. Ryan mostly kept his head down, checking his phone. "Where's Sarah?" someone asked. I think it was Maureen. And Dad, without missing a beat, said, "She can't even afford economy." He said it like he was talking about the weather, like it was just a fact. I didn't react. I didn't move. But I felt the heat crawl up my neck. People heard. I know they did. One woman glanced over, then quickly looked away. A man gave me that side-eyed pity look that says, "Oof, rough." I pretended I didn't hear, pretended I didn't care. But that sentence? It was acid, slow and burning. Maureen chuckled, which made it worse. Ryan looked away, maybe embarrassed, maybe just disinterested. He'd always been good at playing neutral. I didn't cry. I didn't storm off. I stored it, folded it neatly, and added it to the drawer labeled "One Day." Back straight, I turned away from them and toward the private gate. My phone buzzed. "Jet prepped. You sure?" It was my assistant, Claire. I typed back, "Yes." No smiley face, no exclamation mark. Just yes. I wasn't going to make a scene. That would give them power. They'd expect pouting. Expect me to walk off and sulk. That's the role I'd been assigned. This time, I wasn't reading the script. They kept chatting, oblivious. I could hear Dad complaining about parking. Typical. Always a victim of something minor. I passed a family gathered near the escalator. A little boy pointed to the huge glass window where a Gulfstream G700 gleamed on the runway. "That one's for someone important," he said. He had no idea. I walked slower. Not to stall, but to savor it. It's not about the money, I thought. It's that they never asked, never wanted to know who I became. I could have stayed hidden in their shadows forever, and they wouldn't have noticed. Not really. Success didn't matter unless it was loud, flashy, and theirs. Part of me wanted to turn around. What if I was just feeding their image of me? What if showing the jet made me petty, not powerful? But then I remembered the way Maureen laughed, the way strangers looked at me like I was a punchline, the way Dad never once said he was proud, not once in 38 years. I looked back at the message. Jet prepped. No, not petty. Necessary. They'll never see it coming. And for once, they'll have to see me. I reached the VIP lounge entrance and tapped the badge Claire had sent. The door clicked open with a soft hiss. As it closed behind me, I glanced back. They were still talking, still laughing, still sure I was nobody. The gate was crowded, the usual mix of frustrated travelers and tired families counting down the minutes. Somewhere in that blur of noise and coffee-fueled sighs stood my family, checking into their economy flight like it was any other Sunday. Maureen was the first to notice. "Where's Sarah?" She said it too loud, like someone who didn't care about the answer, just wanted the attention of the question. Her voice carried. Dad didn't look up from his phone. Probably missed her flight again, or hiding in the bathroom having one of her moments. He snorted like he was proud of the line. A few passengers looked over. No one said anything, but the message landed, loud and ugly. I could picture them nodding along in their minds. Difficult daughter, drama queen, always the one making it harder for everyone else. "She's probably sulking somewhere," Maureen added with a smirk. "You know how she gets when things aren't all about her." Ryan shifted awkwardly, rubbing his jaw. "Maybe we should check if she's okay?" Dad waved him off. "If something was wrong, she'd make damn sure we all knew. Don't waste your battery." So my absence, my silence, wasn't concern-worthy. It was a hassle, a hiccup in their convenience. But while they stood there wrapped in their usual routines, I was already on the other side. The executive terminal was quieter. The kind of quiet you don't notice at first because it's not just soundless, it's effortless. A staff member greeted me at the door like I belonged there. No second look, no questions. "Ms. Rain," she smiled. "Welcome back." Private security waved me through with a subtle nod. No metal detectors, no public boarding call, just polished marble floors and the scent of cedar from fresh wood polish. I caught my reflection in the glass of the jet door as I stepped closer. This was still me, but something had shifted. The last time I'd looked in a mirror and felt this steady, I was standing outside a courtroom 3 years ago, signing papers to dissolve a business I'd built with someone I once trusted. That day, I didn't cry either. I just learned. Sometimes silence is your strategy. My therapist had said that once, back when I used to need help understanding why some people love louder when you're small and quieter when you grow past them. This moment wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about not waiting for them to see me. Out past the thick glass wall of the terminal, I could see the nose of the jet start to roll into position. Somewhere in the adjacent concourse, I imagined the gate agent announcing a delay for their flight. Nothing major, weather maybe, but enough to make them look up. A little boy near the window pointed. "Mom, whose plane is that? That one's different." She smiled. "Someone important, baby." Passengers started moving toward the glass, phones out, excitement building. And there I was, stepping onto the aircraft, the stairs catching the morning sun just right. Maureen saw me first. Her jaw actually dropped. Then she turned to Ryan, grabbing his arm like she needed confirmation. He stood slowly, eyes wide. "Is that—" Dad didn't speak. His face stiffened, his hand falling from the boarding pass he'd been fiddling with. I didn't wave, didn't smile, just moved calmly, speaking to the pilot like this was routine. Back in the cabin, my assistant Claire handed me a bottle of water. "Your sister's texting," she said, holding up my phone. "You want to see?" The screen lit up. "What are you doing? Is that you?" Followed by another, "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I didn't touch the phone, didn't even blink, just looked at it for what it was, a tiny beacon of desperation. Not care, not love. Just confusion when the story no longer made sense. Last summer, they had a group trip to Arizona. I found out a week after they left. The text they sent? "Oops, must have left you off the group chat." With a smiley face, as if that fixed it. They only remember you when you break the pattern, when you stop playing your part. "I'm not mad," I whispered. "I'm done." Claire didn't ask again. She knew. She'd been around long enough to see the weight I'd carried in silence. The jet crew closed the cabin door with a soft seal, the kind of sound that ends things, clean, final. I looked one last time through the small, round window. Dad was still there, standing stiff. Maureen had her hand on her mouth. Ryan was on his phone again, probably Googling something to explain it all. This wasn't revenge. This was release. I thought of all the doors they'd let slam in my face over the years. This one? This door I walked through myself? It was mine. As the wheels lifted off the ground and the hum of freedom replaced the static of family noise, I whispered to myself, "Let them sit with that." The hum of the jet was soft, steady, the kind of sound that lets you hear your own heartbeat if you sit still long enough. Clouds stretched endlessly outside my window, a smooth white ocean beneath me. I looked down at it and thought, how strange to finally be above the people who spent their whole lives making me feel small. It should have felt like freedom, but distance doesn't erase weight. It just changes how you carry it. The silence in the cabin was kind, almost too kind. Claire was a few seats away, quietly reviewing a report. When she brought me a cup of chamomile tea, I smiled without thinking. The scent hit me before the warmth did. Citrus, honey, something soft and floral. I hadn't tasted that since college. Funny how a taste can pull you backward. Back then, I used to drink it during late nights in Boston, hunched over law books in a room too small for ambition. That tea reminded me of hope, of believing that if I worked hard enough, someone might finally notice. I stared into the cup. When did I start thinking crumbs of attention were enough? At family gatherings, I was always there but never quite in focus. Like background furniture, present but not necessary. The worst part wasn't being invisible, it was how natural it became. I'd been orbiting them for years, chasing a gravity that no longer existed. Somewhere along the way, I'd already broken free. I just hadn't realized I'd left their atmosphere behind. That thought led me back to the first time I learned silence could be louder than love. It was my law school graduation, Boston. A cold morning that smelled like rain and stone. I remember the sound of heels clicking across wet pavement, strangers clutching bouquets, families taking pictures in front of the university arch. I was the first woman in my family to earn that degree. I told them months in advance, sent reminders, even emailed directions. But when I looked into the crowd that morning, no one waved back. No one was there. The ceremony felt longer than it should have. I smiled on cue, shook hands, accepted my diploma. When my professor handed me a small bouquet, she said, "You did this all by yourself, didn't you?" I laughed softly. Seems that way. That evening, I sat in a corner of a Vietnamese restaurant off Huntington Avenue. The waitress asked if I wanted something to celebrate. I ordered pho and a glass of water. When it arrived, I raised the glass and toasted the empty chair across from me. On the way home, it started raining. I walked without an umbrella, listening to the sound of the city washing itself clean. My phone buzzed when I reached my dorm, a voicemail from Dad. "Sorry, kiddo. Work ran late, but congrats." 2 sentences. That was it. I saved that message for years. Not because it meant something, but because it was all I had. The jet tilted slightly, pulling me back to now. My phone vibrated on the tray. A group chat. Family. Summer plans. The irony wasn't lost on me. Where did she go? Is she okay? Does anyone know what she's doing? I scrolled, thumb steady, face blank. Maureen tried calling. I didn't answer. The screen dimmed, then lit up again. It was strange watching them reach for me now, when for years my texts went unread. I remembered sending one from the hospital after breaking my ankle. No reply. Another, after landing my first partnership offer. Just a good for you from Dad 2 days later. Now, suddenly, my silence had value. They only worry when they can't predict me, I whispered. Claire looked up. Did you say something? Just thinking out loud? A few minutes later, she approached again. You've got a call through the jet line. Says it's family. I exhaled slowly. Let it ring. She hesitated. It's a younger voice. A girl. She said her name's Harper. My niece. Maureen's daughter. I nodded. Put her through. The speaker clicked, and a small voice came on, hesitant, careful. Aunt Sarah? Hi, sweetheart, I said softly. You okay? I should be asking you that, she said, trying to sound brave. Mom and Grandpa are freaking out, but I saw what happened. I saw how they were talking. It was wrong. I blinked, caught off guard. You don't have to worry about that. I wanted you to know I'm proud of you, she said, voice trembling. You didn't yell or make a scene. You just walked away. I didn't get it before, but I do now. Something in me cracked, not from pain, but from relief. Thank you, Harper, I managed. That means more than you think, she paused. I want to be like you someday. The call ended quietly. I sat still, watching the clouds pass below. That one small voice did more to heal me than all the apologies I'd never received. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It never was. This isn't about showing off, I thought. It's about ending the pattern. I reached into my wallet and pulled out an old photograph. Me at 15, braces, holding a debate trophy no one came to see. I looked at that girl and smiled. She'd waited too long for someone else's approval. Now, I'd stop the waiting. I thought of Harper, her courage to speak when others stayed quiet. That was the change I hadn't known I was fighting for. My phone buzzed again. I turned it over. One new voicemail. Dad. I settled into my seat aboard the jet, shoulders relaxing for the first time that day. The clouds rolled past like silent witnesses, and the engine's hum droned low. Familiar, steady. I leaned back, letting the tension ease as I replayed an old ache. Being cropped out of family photos. A wedding album from my teenage years sat on a mantle I never belonged to. I remember that blown-up laughter, the camera flash, and inside that frame, a blank spot where I should have been. They saw me often enough to cut me out of their pictures. A cousin once told me, it's easier to ignore someone than fix them. That line struck deep enough to settle like a bruise. For years, I hid behind that silence, letting myself shrink so others might feel bigger. If I remained uninvited, at least I'd be unforgettable. No more missing frames. No more asking for space where none was offered. My phone buzzed. Maricel's name flashed. I opened her message. Why didn't you come today? You're always welcome. I stared at it, curious how welcome is spoken more in words than in presence. Her tone sounded polite, but polite in her world had always meant conditional. I paused, shook off the impulse to explain. She never asked when I was small. Why start now? They say behind every polite phrase lies something harsher. I pictured her in family dinners, raising her glass and saying to someone, she just sends checks. That phrase. She'd used it more than once in subtle ways, when I offered to split bills, helped with down payments, shared maintenance. She'd always dismissed me as someone who gave money, not someone who earned it. I typed, "I came when I wanted to arrive. See you at the event." No more begging, no more pleading for recognition. A flash of memory rose, that reunion years ago. On the foyer mantel of their suburban home, a row of framed faces, mom, dad, siblings smiling, grandchildren lined up. Me? Missing. My eyes looked everywhere until I found the empty space. I asked, "Where's mine?" Chase answered, "You weren't ready for this photo." A life sentence in 4 words. Now here I was, staring at my reflection in this jet window, not waiting, not shrinking. I saw someone whole, not erased. I will claim every frame they tried to erase. Maricel called again, choppy through the line. "Don't think you can walk into my gala and hijack attention," she snapped. She sounded confident, threatening, but her voice wavered, a crack at the edges. "That gala belongs to more than one name," I answered evenly. "I'm simply attending what was always mine." She laughed, short, sharp. "You always overreach," she spat. I stayed calm. Her bait was clear. I would not bite. "I'm not here to fight in shadows," I said softly. Silence hung longer than any argument we'd ever had. I thought again of all those missing photographs, birthdays without me, anniversaries without notice, group gatherings where I was present but never included. Every erased face, every omitted name, every faint whisper built a fortress around me. Inside me, a shift happened. I felt pride, not pain. I wasn't broken, I was rising. This was no longer a plea for acknowledgement. It was a decree, to be known on my own terms. My phone lit up again. A group notification. Venue changes announced. All guests relocated to main ballroom. They assume they can move the ground beneath me. I settled back, eyes steady. Let them shift their illusions. I walked toward reality. I arrived an hour early, not to make a scene, just to ensure everything was right. I'd walked into 1,000 events in my life, but this one needed to move without friction. No hiccups, no surprises. The staff greeted me like I belonged, not just because I'd been there before, but because my name was on the contract. "Welcome back, Ms. Rain. Everything's just as you requested." That word, requested, stuck with me, because they thought I crashed their party. But this space, it wasn't theirs to begin with. It belonged to a former client of mine who happened to owe me more than one favor. I simply placed the call, made the switch, and ensured the paper trail bore my signature. I didn't gloat. I checked lighting, sound, the step and repeat backdrop, minor things, major symbols. I didn't need a microphone to be heard. Presence, done right, is louder than any entrance. People began to arrive. Familiar faces, whispers trailing behind them. I stayed near the rear arch of the ballroom, out of the spotlight, but in plain sight. Let them notice, let them ask. My existence would echo, even if I never spoke a word. And then she came in, Maricel, all sharp lines and designer fabric, strutting like the floor belonged to her heels. The room turned. Her energy was theatrical, polished, practiced, and the moment her eyes found me, her pace faltered. She leaned in to one of her aides. "Why is she here early?" A planner nearby, unaware of the tension, offered innocently, "Ms. Rain pre-approved all logistics. She's listed as executive host." I watched her freeze. Just a second. That mask she wears, control, elegance, charm. It slipped. Not to fall, but to twitch. Enough for me to see the panic crawling up her spine. She approached, slow and tight-lipped. "Enjoying your little appearance?" she asked, tone low and pointed. I didn't flinch. "I always enjoy what I create." Her smile twitched, brittle. She walked away without another word, but I'd already won more than her silence. Later, as the room settled and lights dimmed for speeches, she stepped forward toward the podium, notes in hand. But the MC's voice rang out before she could speak. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin tonight with our co-host, Ms. Sarah Rain. Gasps. A pause. Then a sprinkle of applause, unsure but growing. My father stared from the third row, face stiff, jaw locked. I walked calmly to the mic. No flash, no vengeance. Tonight isn't about spotlight, I began. It's about legacy, not the one we claim in speeches, but the one we build in choices. I saw heads tilt, some confused, some curious, but the message wasn't for strangers. It was for those who thought they owned the room. Maricel stood off to the side, smile stretched so tight it could snap. But I wasn't here to provoke. I was here to stand. During the mingling break, I stepped outside near the garden patio. That's where he found me. My father. Tell me, he said, arms crossed, voice low. All this? For what? A show? A tantrum dressed in heels? I took a breath. Not to defend, just to steady. This isn't about them, I said. It's me reclaiming space you all said I didn't need. He scoffed. You think this earns you family back? I looked him in the eye. I stopped trying to earn people who traded me for comfort. The words surprised even me, but I didn't take them back. Some truths only sting because they've sat unspoken too long. He stepped back, not in fear, in something colder. Distance. People forget, he muttered. No, I said. You forget. I remember everything. I turned and walked inside, leaving him beneath a chandelier he once believed only hung for his name. The rest of the night moved with grace. No dramatics, no unraveling. Guests smiled, thanked me. You kept it classy, someone whispered. Clean. Calm. Harper found me at the edge of the dance floor, arms wide. She hugged me hard. You looked like you belonged, she said. That stayed with me, because it didn't come from a parent. It came from the one who's still watching, still learning, still changeable. I didn't exhale in relief. I exhaled in truth. Later, as I gathered my things, my assistant approached, speaking gently. There's one last detail, she said. Someone left a card for you, from your mother. I stopped, mid-step. I slipped backstage into the dim lounge behind the ballroom, the hum of voices drifting in through the walls. It felt like a bunker of quiet before the storm. Claire was there, papers in hand, tension in her jaw. She told me that someone at the guest list desk flagged Rain as an anomaly. No overt shout, no apology, just a complaint slipping through invisible wires. I thought of that morning when I sneaked past them at the terminal. My seat had already been quietly reassigned, my name erased by assumption. That was twist S6, a betrayal so subtle you almost expect it. Now it was happening again. This time, in front of witnesses. I glanced in the mirror, took a deep breath. This wasn't personal anymore. It was procedural. They either forgot or assumed I'd stay silent. Not tonight. I smoothed my dress, straightened my back. They could whisper. They could raid lists and shuffle names. But I would not wander without respect. We walked back into the ballroom. My VIP seat had a new nameplate, someone else's. That was Twist S17, the seat with no name under mine. A name change requested, they claimed. No record, no formal note passed. I stood, voice calm but firm. Excuse me, that seat is listed under Rain. The room froze. The staff stuttered. The hush fell deep. My father's face shifted, irritation mutating into alarm. I sat in the seat next to my rightful place, eyes locked with Maricel's. She watched me settle in silence, the room buzzing around us. Later, Maricel strode to the mic amid polite laughter and applause. She smirked and scanned the crowd before she spoke. Some people believe prestige is inherited, not earned. Her glance flicked toward me. The room murmured. She expected me to respond. I stayed quiet. Then the projection behind her flipped. Slides, legal documents, property records, signatures bearing rain. The hush deepened. Everyone turned. She faltered. Her narrative cracked. I rose. Calm. Commanding. Prestige doesn't forgive theft, I said. Every head turned. Her lips parted. She had no answer. After the speech, my father appeared beside Maricel in a corner. His voice low but audible. You've gone too far. My name is at risk. She looked torn. Fear and guilt flickered in her eyes. She returned to me, voice tight. You playing hero won't undo what's been done. I replied softly, maybe not, but it ensures nothing more can be done to me. That memory echoed. When Dad called me unfit as a child, I felt that sting again. Now it fueled me. Later, Claire whispered in my ear. The gala contract contained a hidden clause. It named me co-owner of the venue space. My heart thudded quietly. Maricel had gambled too early. She'd thought I walked blindfolded, unaware of the real terms. She misjudged me. Under the marquee outside, the night air was cool and indifferent. My phone buzzed. Security camera from backstage lobby has a surprise for you. A file, delivered to me, already opened. Someone recorded everything. The ballroom's laughter had barely faded when things shifted. The hum of conversations fluttered like butterflies in a storm. People sipped champagne, praised the food, exchanged compliments, but there was tension beneath the veneer. Someone murmured about security footage requests for the speech mic. A camera lens waiting in shadows. Maricel approached me from the crowd, her voice measured. You sure you want to provoke this much tonight? I smiled quietly. I don't provoke, I expose. Her smirk was thin, almost contemptuous, but her eyes tightened. She underestimated how much I had already uncovered. My mind went into code, watching, listening, decoding. In their world, power was illusion. I intended to make it real. Later, the projection room flickered with visuals. Maricel's speech, looping against the walls. But the words weren't hers. They were mine. My voice, my phrases. Only her name stamped at the top. That was Twist S15. The switched speech. I felt a wave of vindication and betrayal collide inside me. She watched me enter, her face drawn, mic in her hand, confidence exposed as brittle. I stepped into the room. The audience turned. She stuttered. You gave me words I never spoke, then claimed credit, I said plainly. She couldn't respond. Her mask cracked. I moved us toward the control room. Hidden footage flickered on monitors. Twist S12. Scenes of her receiving my drafts. Emails from Erica. Time-stamped. Suspicious. My father's eyes grew wide. The walls of secrecy her family built started tumbling. The room went quiet. Every guard was down. Maricel's face went white. Her composure faltered. She spun on her heel. You'd sabotage your own blood to look like a martyr, she hissed. Then she thrust her phone toward the crowd. A clip. A doctored audio file, manipulated to sound like me giving up on them. Gasps rose. She grinned, triumphant. Let's see how your supporters explain this, she said. I barely moved. Calm. Deliberate. I pulled out the pen I'd carried all night, the one she thought I abandoned long ago. With it, I brought up a hidden sound file, The one she didn't check, my voice clear, unedited, responding to her narrative. The audience heard it. The reveal began. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father stumble across the threshold. He tried to command attention. You always wanted attention. Fine, have your stage. His voice cracked. Even his condemnation sounded hollow. I didn't retreat. I didn't yell. I stood still. Let their chaos settle. Let truth take its place. The air felt lighter, weight shifting. She had thrown words at me for years. I offered facts now. That is power. As the night deepened, Claire's phone lit with a new message. Security footage from public gate. Dad's SUV arrives after you left terminal. They thought they knew when I left. They were wrong. The private jet slowed as it taxied into its exclusive terminal. I stepped down onto the tarmac with measured grace, shoulders back, eyes forward. The lights glinted off polished metal. Cameras in the distance flickered. Beyond the glass walls, my family and their party watched via monitors. Their jaws dropped. They stared at first class that belonged to me. They said I couldn't afford economy. Now they watched pride ride out of the runway. An officer stood by the stairs, uniform crisp, voice carrying. "Miss Rain, your jet is ready, ma'am." Time froze. Cameras clicked. Phones lifted. The crowd outside surged against the glass. The hush stretched across terminals. My sister's face went pale. My father's jaw unclenched, then froze mid-breath. I stepped forward, shoulders squared, unyielding. This was not grandstanding. It was rightful return. Later, the evening sky darkened beyond the runway as the media storm hit. A video clip appeared online. Erica's confession, clear and uncut. She laid down hidden contracts, original deeds, name switches made late at night behind closed doors, signed documents, time-stamped emails, my father's own handwriting marking clauses. The truth rattled them in their homes. My family watched the clip on phones, disbelief flooding their eyes. I watched it too. No triumph, only finality. Tweets and headlines exploded. Rain versus Monroe. Secrets exposed. The gala that was supposed to stay private went viral. My father's phone lit. I let it ring. Maricel sent threatening texts. "You'll regret this." I replied, "It's not regret. It's exposure." They traded control over narrative for shock. I gathered my team, PR, legal, communications, between security lines and news crews. Harper's words echoed, "I wanted you to be seen." That belief now grounded me. I drafted the statement, "I will not orphan truth for false peace." Fortitude was my armor. Silence was no longer anonymity. Midnight approached. A breaking news alert splashed across screens. Monroe family headquarters locked down. Security breach reported. The walls they built were cracking, and as the storm swallowed the spotlight, I remained at its eye. The apartment was quiet, except for the occasional hum of the refrigerator and the distant rumble of a city that never really slept. I sat by the window, barefoot, legs folded beneath me, a glass of water untouched on the sill. The light from outside painted long patterns across the hardwood floor. But this silence, this stillness, it wasn't hollow. It felt earned. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, my mind wasn't sprinting from one wound to the next. I wasn't trying to make sense of a narrative written by someone else's hand. I was just here, with myself. I scrolled through the media coverage one last time, not with ego, but with closure. Deleted my father's voicemails without listening. No dramatics, no tears. A letter lay folded on my lap, written months ago, addressed to someone I once knew. To the girl I used to be at 17. "You don't have to keep proving your pain to be allowed to heal," I'd written. "You're not broken." They were just loud. Morning brought a soft breeze through the cafe awning. I met Harper on the rooftop, tucked into a corner booth that smelled faintly of cinnamon and burnt toast. She smiled before I even said a word. "They talked about you at school." She grinned. "Ava's mom said the clip made her cry. Some kids thought it was fake, too good to be real." She laughed, biting into her muffin. "But I told them, that's my Aunt Sarah. She don't fake." I reached for her hand across the table, letting her words settle into something warm in my chest. "You know," I said, "people think legacy is about money or buildings or names on plaques." I paused. "But it's really about showing up, even when nobody asked you to." Harper slid me a small, folded drawing. It was me, flying a jet, the word truth painted in bold on the tail. I stared at it a while. "This," I whispered, "this is the little girl I needed to be. And now, she lives in you." We laughed, not as survivors trying to breathe between bruises, but as two people who knew freedom wasn't an escape. It was presence. Later that day, my letter to my younger self was read aloud on a podcast. The host's voice shook a little as she read my final line. "You don't owe silence to those who handed you pain like inheritance." Calls came in. One older woman said, "You told my story, child. Thank you." I sat on my couch, listening, not crying, not shaking, just hearing, just knowing. Not all impact is loud, but all of it matters. By early evening, I passed the old house. I didn't slow down. Didn't need to. The porch was still there, the same cracked step. But I was different. No need to rehearse speeches in my head, hoping someone would open the door and say sorry. I walked past it like any other building, just another shell. Down the street, I paused at the old park bench, the one I sat at alone the night I graduated, waiting for someone, anyone, to show up. This time, I smiled. No one needed to show up. I slipped a small envelope under the bench, taped in the same corner I once used to hide homework. On it, "For the next girl they overlook." The cycle ends here. Weeks passed. I joined a nonprofit helping adults estranged from their families. Spoke at a women's retreat titled "Worth Without Permission." The last thing I did before bed. Sent one final email. "Confirmed, you're clear to fly." Closed the laptop. Stared out the window. Freedom doesn't look like running away. It looks like breathing without flinching. When the past no longer scares you, it simply becomes a story, and I'm finally the one writing it.